The mattress burned down to the springs. Books on the shelf were now warped spines, enfolding wrinkled pages of ash. The alarm clock was a chunk of deformed plastic adhered to the bedside table. The television tube had cracked and buckled in. The only items not burned or blackened in the room were a portion of the bedding that had been protected by Egan's body, and a section of the floor rug that had been under the bed frame. The bedroom door was still on its hinges, but it had burned on both sides to a fraction of its normal width. Like I said, it was a hot fire. She stepped with caution inside the room, instinctively looking up to make sure she wasn't going to get hit with something. The ceiling was open in sections, revealing part of the attic, and in one place she could see all the way through to the sky. Through the destroyed window, she could see the orchard and nursery, the buildings and commercial greenhouses that comprised Nakomi Nurseries, the business Egan had built up over the years and recently passed to his nephew, Walter, to manage. Jack dealt with fire every day. He knew how it moved and breathed and burned. She'd learned enough from him to understand the patterns. This looked like a flashover. Everything in the room heating up, reaching burn point, and suddenly bursting into flames en masse. Did the room smolder and smoke before flashover, or was it a steady fire? In the police report, Walter said he saw the smoke and then a flash and called 911. It began as a smoldering fire. Jack knelt and picked up large shards of glass from the shattered window. Look at the smoke stain that burned into the pane of window glass. He used the crowbar to pull off the bottom piece of the window frame casing and turned it over to show her the details. You can tell it started as a floor fire burning upward because the fire swept across this wood and out the window. Had it initially been flames at the ceiling coming down the wall and out the window, the burning would be pitting on the top of the wood, not this charring underneath. Daniel had done the autopsy on Egan Hampton. While smoke had killed the man, carbon monoxide had been found in his lungs, indicating he'd been alive when the fire started. There was also a puzzle. He'd suffered a contusion on the left temple, coincident to death. It wasn't severe. The bruising had just begun to seep into the deep tissue. The explanation could be as simple as something falling on him when the fire began, but it needed to be explained. And there was the fact he'd taken what had been determined to be 2 sleeping pills, within the doctor's prescribed dosage, but still a factor to be looked at. For now, the autopsy results were inconclusive. As with all cases that could go either way, it had come back to the central staff at the State Crime Lab for another look at the autopsy results, in light of the case circumstances. Her boss had dropped the case in her lap Friday afternoon. As a forensic pathologist, the question she asked was simple to state and often maddeningly hard to answer. Was the death suspicious, warranting a murder investigation, or accidental? Lisa loved a good puzzle, but not one that arrived to ruin a weekend. She'd read the reports yesterday, concluded only that she needed more information. It would help if you could tell me this was an arson fire. It was a hot fire, but then it's been a hot, dry summer. The house has no air conditioning, and the furniture and flooring had absorbed the afternoon heat. We found a lot of dry rot in the roof, and with this being a small back bedroom, the fire was able to flash over within minutes. The fire started at the base of this wall? As best we can tell. He fell asleep and dropped his cigar. We found the remains of one there. Jack pointed. It hit what appears to have been a burlap bag of laundry. The fire moved across the floor. You can see the distinct burn line. He traced it with his hand, and eventually reached into the closet where it had an unlimited fuel load. It built in intensity and then moved back into the bedroom, along the ceiling. See the bubbling in the wood? By then it was moving hot and fast. How long before the smoke blanket dropped low enough to kill him? The fire probably took 4 to 6 minutes to get a footing. From then to a killing blanket of toxic smoke, you're talking maybe 2 minutes at the outside. The window was open and the door. An unfortunate reality for him. The airflow could cause a natural eddy of smoke into that corner of the room over the bed. She looked at the damage. now more able to understand why Mr. Hampton hadn't awakened. The fire Jack described wouldn't be loud enough to wake a man sleeping heavily under the influence of 2 sleeping pills and building carbon monoxide. By the time the fire surged from the closet back into the room, the smoke would have been thick enough to kill. She looked again for what might have caused the bruise. The heat weakened and collapsed the plaster? The house is old construction. They used a plaster paste over wood, and you can tell that most of it broke away. Directly above this room in the attic were cardboard boxes storing his wife's things, including clothes. Another fuel load, yes. Once in the attic, the fire was burning on both sides of these joists. So falling plaster could account for the blow. Lisa walked to the remains of the bed frame and started searching the area. Is there any evidence of a picture on the wall, something else that might have fallen on him? Jack started tugging back debris. They searched for 10 minutes and found the remains of 2 picture frames and a shelf. The shelf would have been heavy enough, or an item on it. She felt herself relax. One of these items is probably what caused the bruise. Agreed. The cat was found there. Jack pointed to the far corner of the room. Cat? What cat? It wasn't in the notes? There should be an addendum to the fire report. Craig found it during the fire mop-up. We figured the cat was on the bed, got a face full of the smoke, retreated to escape the fire, then got trapped. A cat losing all of its 9 lives. I thought the door was open. It was open when we came up the stairs fighting the fire. I suppose it's possible the force of the water pushed it open, but that would be apparent in the burn patterns. Jack crossed over to the door and carefully swung it to take a look. The door was open during the fire. If it were closed, the door edge around the knob and the edge back by the hinges would have been protected by the door frame, but both show serious burning. Then why didn't the cat bolt from the room? It's hard to tell a burned cat's age, but it looked young, and a cat isn't going to jump through fire at the window or past fire in the doorway. It tried to hide, and the smoke eventually overcame it. We've seen it before. Jack! Up here, Ford. Footsteps sounded on the stairs as the detective assigned to the case came upstairs. He'd been talking with Egan's nephew, Walter. The house was going to have to be demolished in the next few days. Walter was in the process of recovering what essential papers he could from the downstairs office. Ford, do you know what happened to the cat? Lisa asked before she realized Walter had also come upstairs with the detective. Walter was the one to answer. I'm sorry, I buried the cat this morning. I didn't realize it'd be a problem. The crows had been attracted by the death. I found them in here. He swallowed hard. Listen, it's in a shoebox buried at the end of the garden. It'll take only a minute to get it for you. No, Lisa replied, stopping his retreat. It's okay. Jack just told me it had also been killed. Egan liked that cat. It was from a neighbor cat's spring litter. I guess the house was lonely at night since Patricia was taken to the nursing home. He never liked pets before. Lisa saw Walter look again toward the bed and knew it was best that they leave. She could see how hard this was on him. He was in his 40s, lean, a landscaper by profession, with an appearance that fitted. His jeans and gray T-shirt sweaty in the heat. At close range, the ravages of the last 6 days, the healing burns, the stress, the grief, and the lack of sleep were all there to be seen on his face. He tried to reach his uncle, but had been unable to get past the flames. I've got everything I need to finish up my report. We were just coming down. She was comfortable with the assessment that this had been a tragic accident. The dead cat disturbed her, but Jack was right. Pets died in fires. She'd think it through again tonight. Look one last time at the autopsy results, and if she didn't see anything else, she'd recommend to her boss that they sign it off as an accidental death. Lisa was relieved. The last thing she needed was another murder investigation. U.S. Marshal Quinn Diamond walked through the concourse at O'Hare carrying a briefcase he hated, his cowboy boots leaving an echo behind him. His face was weathered.